I'm James Hahn II.
And I'm Mark McClure.
And you're listening to the Oil and Gas This Week podcast, brought to you by Red Wing. Episode, let's hear it, Mr. LaCour, episode 52. One year.
Yippee!
One year. We did it. We did it. 1 year. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe it. Welcome in, Mr. LaCour. How you feeling today?
Yeah. Great to be here, James. Great to be here for a year. It's been a lot of work on both of our parts, but we've done it.
We have done it, and most importantly, our listeners have done it, because if not for them, we're just doing the show between you and I, and you're just doing it as a favor for me.
Yeah. So speaking of that, and our listeners, because they're so vital to our success, we're going to do something special for our 1 year anniversary. Now, we don't have the details, so we can't release what it is, but it will be a live event where we will record the podcast live here in Houston, Texas, and we're going to invite our listeners to come join us. How cool is that?
Yeah, we mentioned it before. We're still working on the details in terms of where it's at and everything, but I'm really excited to tell everybody how to reserve their spot, because the venue is going to want a lot of people, but we still need it. It's going to cap out at some point.
Yeah, it's going to be limited number of seats. So once James tells you how to sign up for it, go sign up, because once they're gone, they're gone.
All right, and it's a fun little exercise that we're going to go through. I am very curious to know, where do you listen to our show? Are you mowing the lawn? Are you on the treadmill? Where are you when you're actually listening? I think we got an email just yesterday about the guy. This guy, he works these crazy long shifts, and he just binges on our show the whole time he's working. So take a picture of yourself, take a selfie of yourself listening to the show, and then go to the show notes at triberocket.com/TW52, triberocket.com/TW52, and leave a comment. And leave the picture, leave the selfie that you take in the comments, and that is what is going to reserve your spot at our 1 year party once we get that venue locked down, because we're going to be throwing down, right, Mark?
Oh, it's going to be great. So go ahead, take the selfie. That's your ticket. Post a comment, and you're in the mix.
And on the topic of comments, let's talk about that a little bit, Mark, because a lot of people, they've become accustomed to sending us, and particularly me, because I CC you on all of them, emails, and I love talking to our listeners. The emails are getting a little overwhelming, and I think we might be able to have a much better conversation if they actually happen on the show notes. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah, folks. So just like you, both James and I get 150 emails a day. Our audience is growing, and just trying to stay top of these email conversations is basically impossible for James. So what you do, instead of sending an email when you have a comment or a question or you're curious about something, is go to the show notes page of that show and leave it in the show notes. This way, it will not slip through the cracks. We won't lose track of it. We will answer your questions, and you can actually start a conversation with us there. That's the best way to do it.
And not only start a conversation with us, but start a conversation with each other. I mean, I'm absolutely blown away. We have geniuses who listen to this show, and I would love to see some fantastic conversations happening around the different topics that we're talking about on each episode. And so if while you're listening, something pops in your head and you say, I want to talk about this, just go to that episode's show notes and leave a comment there. We've got it's called Discuss comment system set up. It's super easy. You don't even have to have a social account to sign in. Although if you've ever left a comment on NewYorkTimes.com, basically any website, it's really the premier comments section for across the web. And so do that for us. And in particular for this show, to reserve your seat, take that selfie, go to triberocket.com/TW52, and we are super excited to see you out there in the field or wherever you are listening to the show. I can't wait. What about you, Mark?
Yeah. So, James, we're speaking of comments. I've actually gotten a lot of comments from people that are on the opposite political fence than I am, and I think that's really awesome. had a guy named Swain Sheps, who admits that he's on the left side of the fence, sent me a tweet, and he's basically we had to engage in a discussion around last week's episode when I talked about the failure of Germany.
You definitely hit some hot buttons on that one, because I saw you had quite a few conversations going.
Yeah, and so people, even if you don't agree with me, reach out. Let's talk about it. I still stand firmly by the fact that that initiative failed, but I've learned a lot from the people that are on the other side of the fence politically, and I love that. So anytime that you know, whether you agree with us or not, reach out, preferably on the show comments. And one thing, James, I need to bring up, I thought of while you're talking, is people out there may not know, when they leave a comment, we are automatically notified. So it can't disappear. It can't slip through the cracks. So the technology's there that we know that you left a comment, and then we respond. So yeah, go to the show notes, leave a comment. We'd love to talk with you.
Yeah, and that solves a real problem, because there have been plenty of questions over I don't know, we've probably done 5 or 6 different Q&A shows now. And there have been several questions that slip through the cracks because, again, we get hundreds of emails and just from our regular day-to-day. And so adding that, it's perfect, because then I can just go right back to the show notes and not miss anything. So on that's a lot of housekeeping and then some partying as well. Let's get into the stories, Mark. The first one is from Seeking Alpha. And the original headline on this that got so many people clicking, and this is interesting to me, we have a lot of international stories. People are voting with their clicks, wanting to hear a lot about international. So let's get into that. Rumors circulating that 100 billion barrels were discovered at the Gatwick airport.
Yeah, this is a great story. So Gatwick Airport's about 30 miles south of London, if you're trying to figure out where it is in the world. And what's interesting about this, we'll go back to that number, 100 billion barrels. If you think about all of the oil that's been produced from the North Sea since it started, that's only about 30 billion barrels. So this would be a huge, huge, huge discovery.
Wait, can you say that again? Because I'm wrapping my head around it. All of the oil that's produced from the North Sea has been 30 billion?
Yeah, if you think of, since history started, if you think about all the oil that's been produced from the North Sea, it's only been about 30 billion. I say only, that's a lot of oil. But if this is 100 billion barrels reserve, this is enormous. Now, of course, I question this a little bit. I haven't looked at the geoscience, but I'm not quite sure how somebody could miss 100 billion barrels reserves. And maybe the Brits just weren't having a good day. But the other thing is, this is conventional oil. Now, I will tell you a funny thing. This just shows people's lack of understanding. So when this announcement was raised that it was big conventional fine, the anti-frackers showed up protesting fracking. Nobody was fracking. This is not shale. So they just show up whenever they hear oil, I guess. This is an exploratory well. It's very, very high production. First, I think first day is like 458 barrels, or 450 barrels per day from the first flow, right when they first hit oil. So that's sizable. So they're having to do further testing. The nice thing is this area is already has some small oil field operations, so the permitting process has already been taken care of. Nobody can stop this. But how cool would it be for London to figure out, or the UK to figure out that they have as much reserves as has come out of the North Sea?
That would be very wonderful for the people of England, especially given all the geopolitics around getting gas over to them and everything. I mean, it's just prosperity and abundance all around.
Yeah, and I suspect that this has to do with the evolution of the technology of geoscience, right? That type of stuff's getting better and better. You can find more and more reserves. I think Schlumberger had a part in doing some of that work out there. But this is a great find. It's going to be interesting to see how this story unfolds as we move forward.
Yeah, and if you really want to geek out, again, go to the show notes and click through and check out this story, because they've got the lithostratigraphy, or I'm clearly not a geologist, right? But I can at least say strategic. Never mind. I'm George W. Bush this morning.
So basically, they have the geology framework laid out in a way that a normal person can understand.
Yeah, completely. So that is a super exciting story. Moving on. Bear market, why GCC investors see opportunities in Russia. And can you first tell us who the GCC is?
It's the Middle East. I can't remember what GCC stands for. The Gulf.
It stands for Gulf. It's the Gulf Coast, whatever conglomerate or something like that, right?
Yeah, this is basically the Middle East. This is a great story. So this is a story on how basically, when you think of countries and large companies, you may not think of them as investors, but they do, because they have cash, right? They have cash flow. Some of them have lots of cash. It's silly to let that money sit somewhere in a bank and not earn any interest. So they invest it like you would invest in the stock market. And they do that to get a return on their capital. And all big companies do this, all governments do this. And this is a story about how the Middle East is starting to invest in Russia. Now, the reason they're starting to invest in Russia is because the rest of the world, the return on their investment is less. We're down to single digits in a lot of places. So if you were investing in a lot of businesses here in the U.S. right now, you'd get 9 or 10% return. Well, because Russia has been devalued so much, it's basically you're coming in and buying your investment dollars are buying much more, because when their economy comes back, your investment is going to surge in growth. So now, of course, there's more risk in investing in Russia. But look at all the Middle Eastern countries; they're all dumping money in Russia, and they're doing it in stuff that I don't quite think I would do, such as the Russian real estate market. I think that's a high risk market to invest in. But these guys know what they're doing way better than I do. So it's interesting to watch geopolitics make investments with countries that don't necessarily see eye to eye.
So what do you say to the guy that's sitting here saying, "What the hell are you talking about, Mark? This isn't a great story. It's people investing in Russia."
Well, the reason it's a great story is that it's something that I didn't know about, that most of our audience probably didn't know about, and it just shows how the market dynamics drive different behavior. One of the things about the oil and gas industry is it's truly global, and you need to understand the global, especially from the business point of view. And here's a good story showing you how changes in global economics is changing the investment habits of some of the biggest oil and gas producing countries in the world.
All right. Speaking of investment habits, or just moral habits in general of Russia or other places, this next story got a lot of clicks from The Guardian. Post-war Iraq, everybody is corrupt from top to bottom, including me.
I love this story. You know how you and I practice business and personally total transparency?
Right.
So here's the guy in Iraq who's charged with or given to try to clean up corruption. So corruption is so bad there. And his own quote was, "I was offered $5 million by somebody to stop investigating him. I took it and then prosecute him anyway." So
nice work, buddy. Nice work.
So this is an article on corruption, and people from the Europe and the U.S. may struggle with this a little bit, right? Because yes, there's corruption here and in Europe, but we know it's morally wrong, so we frown upon it, even if it happens a little bit here. In Iraq, because of the politics and the wars have been going on for so long, what you need is power. You want power. That power provides safety to you. One of the ways you get power is by being corrupt. So the Iraqi people, because of all the wars and the strifes and the change in politics there, have always seen corruption as a way to rise to power, and that power provides safety to you and your family. So if you go through this article, it's really horrible. The corruption literally goes from the top to the bottom, and even the minister who's charged with trying to fight this corruption admits that some of the people at the top he will not go after because they will kill him. You know, most Americans don't understand living in a world where you have to worry about somebody killing you, right? I mean, we have murders here, but not like this. So
not from statesmen.
Not from statesmen, right? Or you don't have private people that have more power than the government. And so, until this corruption gets cleaned up, and quite honestly, James, between you and me, and our audience, it's not going to happen for a while. This is a mess. You have to change the culture, and the culture is always the hardest thing to change. But until they get this corruption cleared up, I mean, they talk about phantom soldiers, right? Where these soldiers are getting paychecks, and they're not real soldiers, and those paychecks are going to politicians' pockets. They're talking about literally refineries that were budgeted, roads that were budgeted that don't exist. All that money went in people's pockets. So they need to get a handle on this, and they're trying to, but it's going to be a long, tough battle.
Yeah, decades or what is that?
Yeah,
decades.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, let's move offshore with the Offshore Support Journal, talking about some different maritime on the seas type activities that are being affected by the downturn. So talk us through this, because I saw operational efficiency in there, which I know is a huge thing we're pushing on a lot. So what do we got here?
So this is a good article, and they talk about Ezira Holdings Limited. They basically reported revenues of about $152 million, but their net loss was $53 million. And it's just because of the decline in prices of crude, there's left offshore services work going on. A lot of people may not know this, but when you work offshore, you have to have this whole infrastructure of vessels to ferry people and supplies, to do maintenance, to do repairs. And that is a significant cost when you do work offshore, which means that it's a significant revenue generator for the companies that do that work. And this is an article about those companies, how their margins are being compressed. In some cases, they're upside down because they've lost work. Now, interesting to me is that they talk about operational efficiencies and operational excellence, where basically they need to streamline their operations, do more with less. And this is kind of a prevalent theme throughout the industry. But here it's once again in the offshore services industry, they're having to do it too. And I honestly think when we come out of this low crude price environment, that companies like this will be better off for it. We need it to trim the fat. We need it to upgrade our technologies. We need it to move more efficient, have more efficient processes. So this is once again, it's another good article about how even though the price of crude is low and businesses are hurting, you can work in that world.
So what are the things these companies are implementing?
The typical things where they're looking at existing processes and procedures, see where they can streamline that, remove duplicate processes, upgrade technology, right? Do we really need to still have stuff on paper that people have to sign off on? Look at how you use your labor pool, even look at where you do business. So this company is headquartered in Singapore, but they have locations all over the world. Well, what is the tax benefits of having that work done, say, in Brazil versus in Singapore versus the U.S.? So when oil is $100 a barrel and these guys were getting some crazy day rates, that didn't really matter. Now that that's starting to disappear, it's important to come in and clean up places in their business where they can improve efficiencies.
And they talk about OSVs. I want to say that we've talked about those before, unless I'm screwing things up in my mind in terms of acronyms. Are those the automated machines that do work for you under the water?
No, you're thinking of an ROV. OSV is offshore support vessel. So you know how we're getting ready to go do a rig tour?
Yes.
If that rig was actually operating in the Gulf of Mexico and they needed some more diesel for their generators on the rig, an offshore support vessel would basically a tanker offshore vessel would come out and fill up their diesel generator tanks. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It reminds me of the Nintendo game Top Gun. So maybe that's what we need for the kids out there right now. Where you go feel up. I don't know. Anyway, we have a very interesting story from Africa, and it was a steal of a deal, ladies and gentlemen. Because it's in response to an article, how a $2.4 billion, is it Elim?
So just say petrochemical.
Okay. How a $2.4 billion petrochemical plant was sold for $215 million.
You talk about some insider baseball information. Here is the project manager that built this petrochemical plant going through in detail how the heck did our government spend $2.4 billion building this, and then our government sold it for $215 million. That's not kosher. And basically, he's calling people out on this.
And by the way, our government being the Nigerian government.
Nigerian government, yeah, not the U.S. government, Nigerian government. I love some of the stuff he goes in here, because one of the things that the government told him is there's a political price. Really, the political price is the delta between $2.4 billion and $215 million.
That is quite a hefty check
to me.
That's one of those Happy Gilmore checks.
Yeah, I mean, that's just ridiculous. So he calls them out. And you know what I think? There's a little bit of a backstory here. Just maybe 2 years ago, James, this guy would not have felt safe to call out publicly, because he would have disappeared, him and his family. This just shows how the president of Nigeria has cleaned it up to the point where people feel safe pointing at other corruptions. That is awesome, right? This is how you get the ball rolling. This is how you get rid of the last of the corruption, is when the Nigerian people feel safe in pointing the fingers.
Yeah, and there's a heck of a lot of it going on, but like you said, it's really a page turner, if you will, of a story because he goes in detail. This is how we did this is how we did that, and then this is what they turn around and did to us, which
And he knows it because he built the darn thing.
right, right. Great article. Check it out in the show notes. Let's come over to our side of the world in America. For Exxon and Shell, the age of ultra majors comes at the wrong time from Bloomberg Business.
Yeah, I disagree.
Love it.
I
Love
I'm
it.
sorry.
Why?
Yeah, this article is basically how if you're an oil and gas super major and you grow too big, it hurts you in this low crude price environment. And I just disagree. I know both these companies very well. Exxon, even in this low crude price environment, Exxon's the only super major that their upstream division is still making money. And the reason it is because they are so large. The scope of Exxon to be able to leverage supplies and costs, their engineering expertise, their project management skills are bar none. In the same way with Shell, Shell has turned itself into a global gas company, very large, huge markets out there. Yes, in this article, they talk about how much they've hurt in this low crude price environment, but so is everybody else. Being large in this industry is important because of the scope of the projects. I was just talking to a prospect yesterday about this. So ExxonMobil has a single deepwater project for ExxonMobil, maybe anywhere between 20 and 80 billion with a B dollars worth of capital investment. And that project life cycle may be 50 years from first oil to decommissioning. And Exxon has thousands of deepwater projects around the world. A small operator just can't afford even the capital to do that, much less to have the talent and the resources to run all those projects at the same time. So some good numbers in here. It's factually reported. I just disagree. I think it's in the oil and gas industry. Your scope is a game changer.
And I wonder if there'll be more of a trend towards smaller companies trying to get larger and larger so that they can hedge themselves against risk the way that Exxon and Shell are able to.
Yeah, well, so there's also benefits to being small, especially in the shale plays, right? Because you're nimble. The big, BPs and Shell and Chevron haven't really done that well in the shale plays because they're not.
No,
used
Shell
to
came
nimble.
into Texas and then sold everything.
Yeah. Now Exxon did what Exxon typically did. They looked at it and they go, "Yes, there's benefit here. No, we don't know how to do it. Who's the best company on the planet that knows how to do this fracking stuff? Oh, XTO Energy, done. Here's a check. You're now Exxon." So they went out and bought that talent. BP and Chevron try to do it in house, and Shell did well, and they just haven't been as successful. But that, if you think about that, that's a business test, right? I mean, you and I both in our business have done stuff that failed, and you fail and you get away from it, which is what the super majors did in the shell plays. So I think there's a lot of benefit to being large, and not that a small company is bad. What happens is when you get in the middle, that's when you struggle. If you're an operator and you're not small and you're not a super major and you're in the middle, that's when stuff like low crude prices can really put a damper on your business.
Well, I think that you made a really good point in what is your core competency. And if you don't have that core competency, if you can afford it, acquire it, but don't go out there outside of your sphere of knowledge and try to be an expert in an area that you can't manufacture from within.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, what's interesting is, you've heard me talk about the super majors. I rattle off all five all the time. You're starting to see the market change. And we've talked about this before, and I'm excited about being in the oil and gas industry now because I'm seeing fundamental market changes, which I haven't seen in 20 years. So I would not be surprised, James, in the next couple of years that we have a new division. The Total and the Chevron and the BPs, their cash flows around $20 billion. We may call those sub-super majors or mid-majors, super majors or something. And you're going to be looking at Shell and Exxon, and their cash flows could be 40 or 50 billion. They're going to be almost twice the size as the rest of their former competitors. So it's fundamental market changes are happening. I think it's good. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all works out.
And some fundamental market changes, hearkening back to a conversation we had with Adam Ferris at Drilling Info on the NAPE show floor, or not at the NAPE Icebreaker, I should say, talking about midstream, and this is from Oil and Gas Investor. Midstream sector could be affected by certain bankruptcy filings, and this is the first story of its kind that I've seen come across the dial. So talk us through this.
So this is all new to me too. I'm so glad you found this. So we've talked about this before. The way a pipeline company makes money is they don't go build a pipeline and then try to sell access to it. They go out to the market and they see where there's a need, and they get long-term contracts signed from companies that need to use the pipeline, so they have guaranteed revenue, and then they build a pipeline, and there's almost no risk involved, right? Because they have money up front and they have money guaranteed for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. This article is talking about, and even in the agreements, they're guaranteed money, they're guaranteed revenue regardless of what the price accrued does, right? And they're also guaranteed that if the company files bankruptcy, that they are the first to the bucket, right? That they get their money anyway when the bankruptcy court figures out who gets paid and who doesn't. So this is an article about how there's a couple operators out there that are looking to use Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but they want to get out of their obligation, the contractual obligation to the pipeline companies. So the Sabine Oil and Gas and Quicksilver Resources are the ones that are doing this. This is the first time it's been brought to court in the U.S. And so if you think about this, if this is approved, it really could hurt the pipeline companies, because this would set a precedence where if you need to get out from under your contracts, the court will let you. This is a hard one to figure out what side I want to take, because I see that the pipeline companies have all this investment based upon contracts that are guaranteed, and that investment creates jobs, long-term jobs, construction jobs, long-term operation job. But at the same time, if you're an operator and you need Chapter 11 bankruptcy just to keep your business working, so you can keep your people working, this is a hard one to call. So I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but this is literally groundbreaking potential news.
You heard it here first, folks. So we'll continue to follow this story because it's breaking, honestly. And yeah, it talks about how Kinder Morgan and Plains All American and so forth did rely on these multi-year contracts that I've learned about from you. And yeah, this is another fundamental shift if it sets that precedent.
Yeah. This is a fundamental shift in the oil and gas industry.
All right.
See which way it goes.
Yeah. We'll follow this story for sure and keep you all posted. And if you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments on the show notes. Falling oil prices haven't scared Berkshire Hathaway from stocking up on an out-of-favor commodity. Mark?
Do I need to even talk about this?
I don't think so. We got the what is he? The Oracle of Omaha, right? And
if Warren Buffett is investing in oil and gas, and he's heavily investing right now, why do you think he's doing that?
Because he knows that prices are going to come back.
He knows they're going to come back, and he's going to make money. And let me tell you, regardless of what you think about Warren Buffett, he knows how to make money for his investment company. So this is an article about how Berkshire Hathaway is heavily investing a lot of CapEx funds in the oil and gas industry, and they're doing it because of these low prices. A lot of these stocks are devalued. Obviously, they expect it to rebound, so their $100 million investment all of a sudden becomes $5 billion. I agree with this investment strategy. I've actually followed this myself, although I don't have the money that Warren Buffett has.
You don't. You've been hiding this on me the whole time. I've been waiting for my check.
Yeah, this is just another validation that the market's coming back.
So what's interesting, though, is that we just talked about Kinder Morgan in the last story, and then here you have Buffett investing $117 billion into Kinder Morgan at the end of 2014.
Yeah. We on our last episode we talked about how Kinder stock is devalued, and I talked about how they have some options, but basically they'll weather the storm and it'll come back. And maybe Warren listened to our show and looked into it and goes, "Hey, they're right. Let's buy some Kinder Morgan stock."
Well, in that case, maybe we can get a 0.5 episode interview. I'll start reaching out. It's going to take a heck of a lot of cold calling, I think. Let's go over here to Lubbock Online with Oil Portfolios Q&A for investors in struggling oil market. All disclaimers: we are not stock analysts in the terms of listen to what we say and buy and sell accordingly. Mark is much more versed in this than I, but we have to throw that disclaimer anytime we start going to this level. So let's talk about it, Mark.
This is a great article. If you invest, and not only invest in oil and gas stock, but if you invest at all, it's a quick read, it's easy, but it makes you think of things you may not have thought about it. So, one of the things is, how bad is it? And basically the experts are saying we're not really sure, which is true. Who's going to cut production first? When will the price rebound? Nobody knows for sure. Now, we have our guesses based upon information that's publicly available, but, I don't have a crystal ball. Another thing is, our lower gasoline prices put money back in the pockets of consumers. for investing, right, or for retail purchase. What are the effects of the oppressed crude price, right? So the crude price just doesn't affect the operators and the drilling crews. It affects things like the overall economic performance of like the stock market. It affects things like the growth in exports because their raw feedstock is cheaper. And so this is, if you just read through this, it's some really good information to make you think about stuff that that the market may inflect your investments on that you may not have thought of. So just a great quick read.
It's a good primer for anybody that might want to get started, like myself, sometime in 2016 or 2017. And let's round things out over here with Anadarko anoints brand ambassadors to fight off drilling bans. And when I tweeted this, I wanted to say, pick me. But tell us about what Anadarko is up to.
I love this story. So this shows how Anadarko gets it, right? Unfortunately, our industry is made up of a bunch of engineers. Nothing against engineers. And over the years, as the public was misinformed or sometimes outright lied to by people that don't support the oil and gas industry, we did nothing. We didn't stop and go, no, that's wrong. What happened is once it got to the point where it was actually affecting businesses, so where you would see bans in fracking or bans for pipelines, then the oil and gas industry tried to spend money and over-inform, right? Mass media, hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, that doesn't work. It doesn't work now anyway. Here's Anadarko figuring out that they need people in the local communities talking about the truth, not talking negative about the anti-oil and gas, but just talking about the truth. And there's a great story here about the 16-year-old girl in a local community who has oil and gas producing property that her family does. And she was worried that they were all going to get sick. And Rebecca Johnson, shout out to you, Rebecca Johnson, who's an Anadarko Petroleum Corporation, went to this classroom of these kids and showed them in a blender how the interaction of frac sand, water works in a well, and then show them the geology so the kids would not feel that they had to worry about getting sick. I mean, this is just awesome work by Anadarko. It goes to show how they're doing this in all types of communities, literally all over the world, but especially here in the U.S. And that other companies like Noble Energy and Whitling Petroleum have seen that this works, and they're doing their part. So I love the fact that the oil and gas industry is now getting it. They're using brand ambassadors, people in the local communities to tell the truth, using social media. It's about time.
It is about time because I've watched this, of course, really I've been involved in it over the course of the years. And this is just a breath of fresh air. And I love her personal model, faith, family, and fracking.
Love it.
Faith, family, and fracking.
Hey, maybe we should get some shirts maybe made with that logo on there.
Yeah, well, maybe you know what? I'm going to reach out and see if we can get her on the phone, because this is just too much of a fascinating story to just let slide. So those are all of our stories for the week. We also have our onion of the week. Woman sets record for talking about herself for the longest amount of time, talking about herself, and it's one of these onion morning news videos. It's hilarious, trust me, in the show notes. And this gives us an opportunity to talk about our fantastic sponsor, Red Wing. And I'm actually going to go and give one of the offshore bags, actually to the winner last week, Christian. He's Chinese, and he happens to be in Houston. And so we're going to link up so I can give him his bag in person. How freaking cool is that, Mark?
Yeah, that's it. That's awesome. We get to meet. Hey, maybe we can finally understand who listens to us in China.
Yeah, is it only him? Right?
Yeah, but anytime we get a chance to interact with our audience in person, we love it. So that just that's gonna be really cool that you get to actually go meet him. He's from China, happens to be in Houston, and you'll give him his bag he won.
It's fantastic. And then to get some pictures of the Red Wing bag over in China, that like maybe we can get a picture on the Great Wall. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out here. That would be amazing. All right, and we do have a winner for this week. Who is the lucky winner of the Red Wing offshore bag this week, Mark?
Congratulations, Mr. Dave Weaver with Blue Water Satellite. He's a business development manager and he's a veteran. So Dave, enjoy your bag and thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. For real, thank you for your service. It's not said or heard enough. So if you want one of these bags, but I don't want to just jump right into that because we do have to take a moment and talk about Well, just how awesome Red Wing is, because I've never mentioned her name, but her name is Chris. She's the global brand manager, and she gets up at early in the morning to be able to get us this winner every week, because we record the shows on Thursday at 7:30 a.m. and she gets us every week, gets us the winner, and it's totally random. And they've just been such an outstanding company to work with, and in her concern in making sure that everyone, because we've had a couple of times where people's emails didn't work, and it's so amazing how customer centric their company is.
Yeah, customer centric, and they care, right? They take pride in what they do. Quality is a mantra over there. They make great stuff. When you and I go on our rig tour, I will be in Red Wing boots for a reason, because they're the best damn boots out there. So hats off, Red Wing. Thanks for doing great work. You have great people, and thanks for your support of the podcast.
Yes, very much. Thank you. And if you would like to win a bag of your own, we're giving away one a week through the end of March, and we're almost to the beginning of March. So go to it's See official site for details. No purchase necessary to enter and win. It's redwingshoes.com/podcast. That's redwingshoes.com/podcast, and throw your name in there, and you could be like Dave Weaver, or Christian, our Chinese friend that we're going to meet hopefully today or tomorrow. And
yeah, folks, you can enter every week. Don't just enter once. Feel free to enter every week, because these bags are awesome. You really want one.
You can enter every week, but only one counts. So know that. So
right.
if you do a dozen each week, they get out the duplicates, and so you have one chance to win, and it's totally random. Hey, pick a number, and that's how it works. But regardless, go out there and thank you for listening, and please, go to the link, and hopefully you can win one yourself, because this is how we're able to do this show for free. It's because of the support of our sponsors. It's what keeps us going. So thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting our sponsors. We got some events on deck, which is IADC/SPE Drilling Conference and Exhibition. That's happening up in Cowtown. Mark, tell us about this particular show.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell me what IADC and SPE stand for.
The Society of Petroleum Engineers. You're totally throwing me under the bus with the IADC.
This is education. So IADC is Independent Association of Drilling Contractors. So this expo is all about drilling. So if you on those high horsepower rigs, right? If you're doing offshore stuff, if you know what a turntable is or a top drive, this is the conference for you.
Not the kind of turntable that I'm cutting it up on.
No, not the type of turn. And I'm actually, I would like one of our audience to that works out in the field to let me know, do they even still use turntables? I may be dating myself.
I'm just picturing a guy on a rig, just on the top of some platform, turntables, speakers, just rocking it out. But those guys,
yeah, no.
Those guys rock their own way. They have a good time out there when they are throwing that chain, and oh my goodness, it's amazing. I'll actually, we've talked about this before offline. I'll find one of these videos of these really experienced rigmen.
I have one that I tweet that people go nuts over, and if you watch them, you go, there is no way they're that quick, but they are. It's just because they've been doing it for so long.
All right, I'm going to hold you to giving me that link, so it'll be in the show notes. And so that is March 1st through the 3rd up there in Fort Worth, so it's just next week. And then we have the North American Crude Summit from Platts, our podcast nemesis. All jokes, all in good fun. But what a way to have some fun by endorsing their event on our podcast, so that we can dominate their podcast.
Yeah, so this is Platts' take on what's going on in crude oil. You'll get a lot of projections, you get a lot of data. Even though they're a competitor of ours, we're happy to highlight their stuff. So if you want to know what's happened with crude and what the experts think is going to happen, go.
All right, and the first Friday Q&A is coming right up. It's a week from tomorrow, but by the time you're hearing this tomorrow, it'll be a week away. So, I mean, we have a ton of questions, but if you want to get yours in, just again, go to the comments. We've been going triberocket.com/QA and everything. Just go to the comments on this particular episode, triberocket.com/TW52, and leave your question there. Let's talk about the LinkedIn group, Mark, because we haven't talked about it in weeks, and it hasn't been growing as a result.
Yeah, so if you enjoy our podcast, you'll enjoy our LinkedIn group even more. We don't allow spam ever. There's a lot of good information being shared out there. I've seen James jumped in and help people copyright stuff. I've seen our members share sales contacts. So it's a companion to the show. So if you listen to the show, go join our LinkedIn group. You'll be glad you did.
Yes, so that's at triberocket.com/LinkedIn, and that'll take you right in
James,
there.
before we go to the next bit, I just want to give a quick shout out to Rich Rowe with the Rocky Mountain Motor Sales. Rich reached out to me, and basically he was a police officer. So thank you for your service. And he got into sales in the frac fields, and he wanted some help. He was struggling. And so what I did is I had him reach out to some of the members in our LinkedIn group who also sell motors, but in different parts of the country, so they're not competitive with him. And he was so thankful, because that helped him more than anything. He was so thankful that he sent me this really cool beanie hat and some cards and some pins from his company. So, Rich, I don't expect you to send us anything. We're happy to help, but I'm glad you reached out, and I'm glad you found our LinkedIn group valuable.
Yeah, and what a great endorsement for the value of the LinkedIn group. Let's talk about reviews, because we got a few of them. And number 58 in the order here, according to iTunes, from Kevin Mars, sources used are legit. 5 stars.
They're legit.
They're legit, baby. I am happy to finally listen to a podcast daily that is simple to the point and cites sources. Mark and James speak on all topics all around the world, which is, we were talking about that offline, Mark. I'm hearing so much more about people really appreciating that aspect of the show. They also have a careers podcast that I've shared with numerous people in my master's program in energy management who are unfortunately unemployed. I'd recommend both podcasts for people interested in continuing their knowledge and research in all aspects of oil and gas, as well as topics on energy. What's most important is they break down upstream, midstream, and downstream topics often related to potential job opportunities. Thanks, gentlemen. How cool. That's freaking awesome.
Awesome.
I love it.
And I'm glad you're sharing our careers podcast, right? If you know anybody out there that's looking for work that unfortunately has been laid off, or maybe somebody that wants to get in the industry, we have a podcast for that.
Yeah, we have a podcast absolutely for that, and it's 20 minutes. So it's 20 minutes every Tuesday morning. And the next one here, Good Oil and Gas Weekly, Horse with No Name, 4 stars. Good oil and gas discussion of topical news. Would be great to hear less about Red Wing and conference navigation and more about project-specific content. Well, we're not going to talk less about Red Wing because they're the reason that we can do this show. But but having said that, it's interesting because we have gotten quite a few people talking about project-specific. So and we do our best.
You really talked about the possibility of starting a oil and gas project specific podcast. So audience, we have some other podcasts in the works. We're not going to tell you what they are yet, but that's one of the possibilities.
Yeah,
so stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. And then lastly, from Texas Mineral Man, best oil and gas podcast out there. I'm a landman and can't begin to tell you how many times I've brought up this podcast with coworkers when discussing the various issues and events currently impacting this great industry. If you're not staying up to speed with what's going on, you're going to get left behind. Employers,
So true.
Yeah, absolutely. Employers look for and keep people who can add value to operations. This is exactly what this podcast does. Wow, this is awesome. It will add to your value by making you a more knowledgeable and well-rounded oil and gas professional. Keep up the great work, guys. Man, I live for those kind of reviews. That's amazing. Thank you
so much.
Thank you. And if you'd like to leave your own review, it's triberocket.com/TW reviews. And if you made it this far in the podcast, please share the show as these people have talked about sharing it with their coworkers. Send an all-company email. Tell them James said it was all good. Or you can go to just type into your browser on your phone or wherever, triberocket.com/LI for LinkedIn /
share LI, James.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Share. I left it out. All right. triberocket.com/share LI for LinkedIn / share FB for Facebook and / share TW for Twitter. And with that said, I think it's time to get out of here.
Wait, before we get out of here, I want to go back to something. So, folks, we are in competition with Platts. if you're somebody that likes competition, help us compete. Leave us a review so we can smoke them. So now I'm ready to get out of here.
Now you're ready to go. All right, let's go.
Hey, folks, do great work. Pay it forward, and we will see you next time.
Go find some grease, guys.
Told myself I got nothing to lose. Time after time. Oh, oh, oh.